name is Allan McCann, and I am the Vice President of Business Development for the Portland Press Herald. It's been a couple of months since we've gathered together like this, and even longer since we've gathered together in person, drinking our delicious coffee by design and catching up face to face. But I do hope that you all had a good, safe summer, and I thank you for joining us. And for those of you for whom this is your first event with us, welcome. Before we begin, I'd like to extend our gratitude to our Making It Work sponsors: Cross Insurance, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Coultas Trust Company, and MEMIC. And now to hand things over to our special projects editor, Carol Coultas. Take it away, Carol.
Thanks, Allie. Welcome, everyone. We're delighted that you could be here with us today. We looked at the topic of a remote workforce back in May, and I think at that point, we were thinking of it in the context of well, how do you maintain communication and productivity? And there are a lot of logistics issues. But I think perhaps kind of underpinning all of that was a sense that this is temporary. And by midsummer, maybe late summer, we're all going to be back in our offices. Well, clearly that is not the case. Many of Maine's most well-known companies have announced that no, they are not going to be returning to their offices anytime soon, and that includes the Press Herald. We won't be going back until sometime in 2021. So that really got us thinking about, okay, for all of us who've been working from home and have been just sort of cobbling together workarounds, it's time to get serious about working from home for the long haul. And so what are some of the strategies and the resources that we can, implement to make that process better for everyone, for the worker, for the company? And I'm really delighted that I have a great panel to talk about those issues. So I don't know if you saw the story that my colleague Peter McGuire did in late August, but he was looking at this issue of a sustained remote workforce. And it was interesting to me that companies like WEX, which has just built this gorgeous new complex in the downtown, in Portland's downtown, and is intending to still build new office space in Scarborough, only has a handful of their 1,300 Maine workers working in their offices. Almost everyone is working remotely, and WEX is taking a very kind of day-by-day attitude, assessing that and deciding what they're going to do going forward. Sun Life, which is supposed to be building a brand new office space on the former Portland Company complex, intends to continue with that project, but it is also redesigning its office space to accommodate more space for people so that things like social distancing can be more easily implemented. And then there are other companies like Pretty Flaherty. They have had tremendous success having their entire staff working from home. And so they are reconsidering whether they want to have all their employees riding the elevator up to the 12th floor of one city center. So all of these things are in a state of flux. And because of that, we thought it would be good to come back to this issue and look at it with a little bit longer lens. And so, just a quick word about format. What we generally do is I will introduce the panelists and we'll chat for 30 or 35 minutes. And then we'll turn it over to questions from the audience. You can see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a Q&A, so please use that to submit your questions. And Strawberry, who is our wizard behind the scenes with our IT management, will queue those questions up for us. So without any further ado, let me introduce our panelists. So first up is Allan Brown. So Allan is the Director of Ergonomics and Physical Therapy at MEMIC. He has been helping workers stay safe in the workplace for 35 years. And he has written many papers on how to maintain worker safety, and also has done many presentations on a national level. He has earned a bachelor's degree in health, physical education, and recreation from Penn State. And then he's also got a bachelor's degree in physical therapy from Howard and has continued his ergonomics training at the University of Michigan. So welcome, Allan, although I'm a little concerned I don't see your face on my Zoom screen. So he's in
Oh, you don't?
Rangeley? No. Are you connected? There we go. Okay, great. All right. So phew, Allan's with us. We also have joining us Anastasia Bean. She is a claims analyst with Cross Insurance. She's a Brewer native and a Maine grad, so hooray for that, and has been working as an advocate with Cross since 2015. She specializes in multi-line property and casualty insurance, and she also is a claim service specialist serving as a liaison between customers and insurance carriers. And she advises people, and this is what makes her presence here particularly germane right now, in the areas of risk management and loss mitigation. So welcome, Anastasia. And then we also have joining us, sort of a familiar face. We've had Lisa on our Making It Work and our business breakfast forums before, and that's Lisa Whited. She is the founder of Workplace Transformation Facilitation. She's a workplace strategy and change management consultant, and she has been really specializing in the last 6 months or so with how to make working from home and virtual working effective. And so, but she's been in design and workplace organization since 1983. And she is a senior associate at Advanced Workplace Associates in the UK. And she's the founder, as I mentioned, of Workplace Transformation Facilitation, which is based in Portland. She holds a master's degree in organization and management from Antioch University. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're going to get the ball rolling with the first question for me, and it's for you, Allan. So I have to, when I talk with Allan, I was doing it from an overstuffed couch, and I had my laptop balanced on a tower of books. It was all very precarious, and I realized my back was aching. And it occurred to me that I was one of those people just sort of doing the workarounds. And so my first question is about taking ergonomics seriously. And so what resources are there for making sure that people put a priority on a suitable workspace at home? And can you just talk a little bit about how that might be connected to workers' comp risk? So take it away, Allan.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate it. It has been an adventure. We've been the past 6 months kind of just trying to figure this all out and watching this paradigm continually shift. It hasn't settled yet. But echoing what you've just said and what Tony mentioned, that a lot of industries thinking, maybe we're not going to come back right away and we're going to stay here more permanently. In regards to you and the sofa, you were not unlike many folks that took their laptop home and decided to sit down and just start thinking it was going to be a short temporary thing. Unfortunately, human physiology doesn't take a vacation, and it doesn't punch out when you leave work. If you're going down to 261 Commercial Street at MEMIC, you don't leave your ergonomics there. Your human physiology and your ergonomics follow you wherever you go in the world. I always tell folks there's this thing called gravity. 9.8 meters per second squared. I don't care where you go in the world, it's going to pull on your body. So when we just took our laptop and went home, we really brought everything together, our hands and our eyes and the keyboard and the screen. And when we sat down, we put a lot of stress on our bodies and created problems. So in the world of workers' comp, we tried to get out ahead of that and create a resource for folks to assess their home office. We even went as far as said, we will even do an ergonomic assessment of your office. We'll do it virtually and come to your house, which has become a very popular tool. We're seeing.
How does that work?
Folks take, in a brief moment, they take 5 photos of it's a static workstation pretty much, an office. You're on a mouse, you're on a keyboard, you have a chair, you have a laptop or a screen, and we want to look to see how you're lined up using those things. Are you using the kitchen table? Are you using the sofa? Are you using the overstuffed chair? And then what we do is we'll draw on the pictures and we'll bullet where we see some of the risks. And then at the bottom, we'll actually give suggestions. And we discuss with industry, what are you looking to do? Are you looking to do some sit-stand workstations at home, or do you want to try to use what folks have? We call it the MacGyver approach, which is, grab some cushions, grab a box, whatever the case may be. Let's, a blanket to shove behind the back. And then we try to get the person comfortably set up at home. I think I've sent some of those resources to you guys, which I don't know if we have the ability to post here, but we can put those out there for folks to take a look at and use. So, and after 6 months, 7 months, we're now beginning to see those work-related injuries that are occurring at home. So again, we're trying to do our best, but here's some of the things. That's actually the 5 photos that we like folks to take. So those are available for folks. And I tell everybody online here to take full advantage. Typically they're for policyholders, but in this unusual time of COVID-19, MEMIC has kind of reached out to a lot of folks beyond MEMIC policyholders and have a lot of our COVID-19 resources available. So take advantage of it because it's here for you guys, and we're here to help you out.
Great. Well, thank you. I should let folks know that we will have that resource sheet posted on the Making It Work landing page after this presentation. So if you want to make reference to it, you can find it at pressherald.com.
And now I'd like to introduce the Vice President of External Communications at MEMIC, Tony Payne. Tony.
Hi, thank you so much, Allie. It's great to be here, great to be back, even though the summer has just flown by for all of us. I wish it weren't so. I wish we could keep this thing going. But as it is, here we are. And the subject today really couldn't be any more timely. It's about having to make perhaps a permanent transition to working from home or someplace other than your normal place of work. And I think that that's one of the discoveries we've all made during this shutdown is that work is an activity. It's not a place. But when you do work, we really want you to be safe in doing so. And as MEMIC, we of course are particularly interested in your safety because we don't want to see any injuries show up that could be otherwise avoided.
And so let me ask the next question of you, Anastasia. I guess I don't quite understand where a business policy and a homeowner's policy overlap or conflict with each other. With so many people working from home now, what are the questions that business managers should be asking with respect to insurance? And this particular question occurred to me, if you're meeting someone in your backyard for a one-on-one socially distanced consultation, and that client trips on your flagstone path going into your backyard, how is that claim handled? So what are sort of the broad strokes that people should be thinking about making sure they have adequate coverage for maintaining a remote workforce?
That's a very good question, Carol. And that's something that we're seeing is happening with so many people working from home now, whether it be for their own business or working for an employer. And we're finding that the lines are kind of getting blurred between home and business. So the most important thing to understand with an insurance policy is that every policy is going to have a basic form, your property, your liability, and depending on what your operations are, your policy is going to be built with additional endorsements on what you're going to need. Because obviously, say you are a CPA working from home, your business policy is going to have some different needs than, say, a manufacturing company or something like that. So really the most important thing is to talk to your agent about what types of policies that you have in place. What I can say though, from looking at the very basic policy forms, on a homeowner's policy, for example, I believe there is very limited coverage for any equipment that is going to be used for a business. So say you have your laptops, your computer screens, your keyboards, things like that. From what we're finding from our insurance carriers is that there is limited coverage that's available for that, but where it's also the property of the business, your employer's insurance may also cover that as well. So that's really a conversation that you want to have with your insurance agent is, does the personal property policy, or does the homeowner's policy cover the business and business property? From a liability perspective, that's another area where the lines get kind of blurred. Every basic liability policy has premises and operations coverage, which basically means any property damage or bodily injury that results from your negligence as a business owner, your premises and operations would cover that. Now, if your employee is working from home, as an example, and if they are bringing a customer onto the property, they are, opening an exposure there. So that's another thing that you would want to talk to your agent about is does your business liability insurance extend to your employee's property? And I know that the homeowner's policy, that they typically do not cover any liability that occurs due to business operations. And but there is an endorsement that the homeowners providers are now offering that would provide an extension endorsement to employees that are working from home and doing business practices at their home. So again, as an employer, you want to be asking your employees to talk to their agents too as to what their homeowners policies provide from a liability perspective.
Okay, so if you've just been sort of, otherwise occupied with all of the working from home arrangements, really you need to have a conversation with your insurance agent to make sure that there's appropriate coverage, so that if your toddler goes into your workspace and starts banging on the keyboard and breaks it, where the coverage for that is going to come from.
Exactly. So, if the property, say your laptop belongs to your employer, and the business property on your employer's policy extends to that property, then it's still their property. So, it would likely respond, again, you would need to talk to your agent to see if it's endorsed on the policy. Yes, that's definitely a conversation you'd want to have with your broker.
Okay, and since we're talking about equipment, let me just ask Allan a follow-up question.
Sure.
So, if you can take your equipment from your work office and set it up in your home office. But if that's not something you can do, or if, for instance, you live someplace where maybe the broadband connection isn't as strong as it was in your workplace, or there's some other modification that you need to make in order to work efficiently from home, is that something that companies are stepping up and providing money or resources so that those enhancements can be made? Or is it more like you're kind of on your own, folks, you just need to figure out a way to make it work?
The short answer is it's a whole continuum. You've got industry that says we're going to stay home till the end of 2021. So, we had dynamic workstations dynamic are sit-stand workstations, which they're pretty ubiquitous throughout Maine now. So you're seeing them pretty much everywhere. I want to say that Maine's one of the leaders in dynamic workstations. So, you get a lot of folks that are home now going, geez, I had a sit-stand at home or at work, and I have one at home. Some companies are willing to step up and do that. That's a fairly expensive investment. I mean, that's furniture. So we're seeing folks sort of draw the line. They're saying, I'll buy keyboard trays. I'll buy, for example, I'm looking at you through my laptop, but I always have my keyboard and mouse that come with me, so I can separate and I can stay in pretty good working neutral. They'll get you keyboard and mice. Some folks might be working at their dining room table. I don't know where you guys are all sitting right now, but tables are sometimes too high, so there's attachable keyboard trays. Those are document holders, things like that, or things around the desk. A lot of industry said we'll buy those because we want them safe at home. And you have others that say, we'll go and provide a stipend. We'll give them a $500 stipend if they go through an Ergo assessment. So I'm getting lots of those questions this past month. For some reason, there's been a tremendous amount. I mean, this is very fortuitous that this came along, this whole working from home, the long haul, because I think folks are beginning to recognize that it is going to be a long haul. How do we address it? A lot of companies, and a lot of, I know we have smaller companies here today, probably don't even have a policy for working at home. So I would say the first thing to do is to get a policy to work from home, so that everybody's on the same sheet of music, and then decide management-wise, what do we want to provide? And you're right, some industries do allow you to go in and take things back, the chair, whatever. But think long and hard about those furniture pieces, because those are fairly expensive. But at least a keyboard and a mouse, so they can plug in and pick their laptop up and put it on a platform so that they can separate, so we can get some form of neutral and get away from that sofa sitting like you were doing. So it's, you know, there's a whole continuum out there, and it's a case by case. You know, you as an industry have to decide, can we remain productive with folks at home, and are they doing a great job? And if so, you know, prior to COVID, we were actually transitioning to having folks go and work from home. Lisa might be able to speak to that, but it, you know, that it was in COVID, it was just sort of a natural transition because we wanted to invite more folks that like that option. It just so happened that COVID pushed that along very quickly, and everybody had to make the change, but we're all discovering things about that. So
More folks is code for younger people, right?
I didn't say that. I am it's funny, Anastasia and I are talking about the older workforce tomorrow, so together, and I'm one of them.
Well, you're in good company. We're the oldest state in the nation, after all.
Yes, we are the oldest working state.
Let me bring Lisa into this conversation. So Lisa, our Zoom happy hour is over, because I know that one of the things that I've been hearing more in just the last few weeks are people who were really reliant on the structure of an office or the energy that's generated in working collaboratively with other people, and are really sort of feeling the strain of working in isolation. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about if while we're working remotely, are there things people can do to improve employee satisfaction? And, you know, particularly those who are missing those aspects of working in an office.
Absolutely. And it is, you know, I was just on a call earlier today, and we were talking about ways that we can intentionally connect with others. And the thing is, we've got to remember, and I have years of data to back up this statement. In the workplace, there was a lot of dissatisfaction with how things were. And we tend to romanticize the notion of the office. And so, but there were some great things, absolutely, about connecting. And we talk about water cooler moments and the spontaneity of running into somebody. And so if we don't have that right now, because of our remote working way of doing work, what are the intentional ways that we can connect? And the thing with the Zoom happy hours that you mentioned is that novelty can wear off pretty quickly. We're all tired of looking at little squares on a screen. And the thing we need to find the opportunity to do is connect into smaller discussions, one-on-one, 3 or 4 people only, you know, use the Zoom breakout. Go outside for a walking meeting, leave the laptop behind, don't even FaceTime, just put the phone up to your ear and talk to somebody. Be outside, take advantage of this gorgeous weather in this state for this little window of time we have decent weather. But be intentional, and there are ways, there are apps, and I'm gonna share some links with Strawberry to post. One is called Spark. It's a way that you can connect with others in your organization that maybe you would not be comfortable reaching directly to normally, but through Spark, it's not like Tinder, but it is the idea of connecting people so that they can have a conversation and get to know each other. Because at the end of the day, what makes our workplaces great are relationships. And the research that's been done, so the AWA that I'm part of, the Advanced Workplace Associates, has an arm called Advanced Workplace Institute. And the AWI connected with the Center for Evidence-Based Management and did research looking back 20 years on what allows people to work well in a virtual world. And we updated that research in 2020. And the three key things that we need to have in place, there were 6 things, but the 3 that are most important in the virtual world are trust, social cohesion, and information sharing. And trust is what it says, right? It's just trusting our colleagues, they're trusting us. And when we have that in place, we're more likely to connect with them and have social cohesion. That's the glue that holds us together, those relationships. And we have both of those in place, we're more likely to share information. And information sharing is so critical in organizations, right? That's what helps us all move together productively to achieve our vision or our mission. So in spending time on that and being thoughtful, and not waiting for, because the water cooler moments aren't going to happen, right? We're not going to be running into people in the hallway. So we've got to find intentional ways to connect, to talk to each other, to listen, and to go a little deeper. It can be uncomfortable, but that's part of this moment in time and trying to find what are the good ways that we can bring back into how we do our work and be more connected as a society and as humans.
So what is it about Spark that makes it better than, say, Zoom or FaceTime or any of the other social media avenues we have available?
It's a, and I, you know, I'll put the thing in the link, but it's a, just a way that you put everybody's name in the organization into Spark, and it will send 2 of you an email, 2 of you that you may already know each other or you may not, and it will just be a prompt and say, Lisa, connect with or reach out to Carol. Have you spent time talking with her? It's just a way to prompt us, almost gives us an excuse to connect, but it's then how you connect is up to you. We could literally go out for a coffee and sit across from each other or go for a walk or something.
Okay. And since you have the floor and you've done a lot of research on this, what are some of the lessons that we can take from companies that have always maintained a remote workforce? I'm thinking of like some manufacturing companies that have global distribution networks, and so they have always maintained remote sales offices and other components. And since they've been doing it for a long time, are there some obvious lessons that those of us who are relatively new to working in a remote setting that we can learn from?
In all of those organizations, and if this goes back to just good practices, think about Jim Collins and From Good to Great, Simon Sinek and Start With Why. Clear vision, a widely shared purpose, transparency and leadership. When you have those things in place, those are the organizations that are doing really well. That even if they were not remote beforehand, but went through this, they're doing well now because those things were in place. We cannot put enough attention on the importance of vision and goal clarity and purpose, because this is, and it's also an intrinsic human motivator, that we know when I'm doing work that I know is making a difference on a bigger purpose, then I'm more motivated to do better work. When I know I'm working for a leader who's transparent with his or her communication, then I'm more likely to trust, right? One of those key things, that they're going to do things that are going to allow me to do better work. So those are the things, when you look at the companies and the organizations that are doing this well, it's often because they had those things in place. And to follow up on what Allan said about making sure there's a remote work policy in place, one of the key things I say is when you start to write that, if you haven't had one, put yourself in the question, pose the question, are we making this policy based in trust or based in fear? And often when it's based in fear, that's when you have a 20-page policy trying to define every single action that you're going to do when you're working remotely. So it's very, very important that you find ways to trust. And what does it come down to? Communication. Conversation, direct, one-on-one, getting clear about purpose and intention, and then working together to find a solution.
Great. one of the sort of along the communication thread, one of the things that that Pete's story mentioned that HR directors are finding a sort of a surprising problem maybe is that folks are not, they're not taking breaks, they're not taking their paid time off. It's kind of weird where, you know, I think everyone was maybe a little surprised that productivity has been as strong as it's been with people working from home. But maybe the other side of that is nobody's putting their laptop away at 5 o'clock either. And I'm just curious if any of you have advice on, you know, how do you deal with that? How do you make sure people are taking care of themselves when they're out of sight?
I mean, I'll just follow up on that. My phone, I'm the most important person in my calendar. And if I don't put it in my calendar to take a break or to do whatever, I like going to the gym first thing in the morning. That is my priority. That's my big rock in the jar, right? They talk about the priorities and the rocks. So I think that is something that we need to just build it into our day, make an appointment with yourself, carve it. It's a new habit. Habits are part of a learning and discipline. The reason I think the productivity has been so high is people are afraid. They're scared shitless that they're going to lose their job. So fear is driving part of their behavior. So again, the transparency with leadership and leaders being models about saying, look, I want you to take this time. Managers saying you need to take this time. It's a very important way of creating the leadership and the path for being healthy.
Interesting.
To dovetail onto what Lisa just said, it's interesting in the world of MEMIC, loss control are a group of folks that work from home. You know, we always have had a remote office, and then we go out to industry. So we were kind of familiar with all the things that happen when you go into an office by yourself. And during the pandemic, it's 40 of us, and we reached out to the other 430 employees because we have 470 at MEMIC, and called them and said, how you doing? How are things going? And what you just said, Carol, one of the things people were forgetting to do is take a break because there was no colleague to interrupt them. There was no, you know, hey, you want to go for a coffee? You want to do this type of thing? So it was incumbent upon us to say, hey, you got to take a break. Go outside, walk the dog, go weed the garden, for goodness sakes. Go do something. Just walk away. And it's amazing because I think some of the pre-questions we got were, how do I take a break? And it amazes me. I'm going, just go take a break. But it's not that intuitive to folks. We have at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock when we were at MEMIC, and even to this day, B. Fuller, our front desk person, gives us a little, hey, time to take a break, and walk away. And as I always point out, Mike Bork and I did this whole thing because some people go, I don't need to take a stretch break. And I go, you get 2 5-minute stretch breaks a break, 2 5-minute stretch breaks a day. Do you know how much that adds up to in a year? That's over a week's worth of vacation. Why wouldn't you take a week's worth of vacation? You know, and I'm going, walk away. So we still get those notations from B. We'll get either a little witty saying, a little motivational saying, a little funny saying, or we'll get a music video. You know, like and we get up, we dance to it, or whatever the case may be. But we just learn to kind of embrace it, take it, run with it. You know, 10 o'clock seems to be when I go get another cup of coffee. I walk out, okay, let me see how the dog's doing. Let's have the dog take a pee. Okay, let's get a pee. You know, but you got to make it part of your life. And I think 6 months we're probably getting a rhythm like that. But don't give that up. Don't give that up.
So do you think, I mean, I understand what you're saying about, you know, managers have to embrace that, but would you say that the bigger responsibility is for the employee to embrace that? It's like you have to put yourself first, kind of what Lisa was saying about, you know, getting to the gym first thing in the morning and making that a priority, that for people who haven't been used to making their work schedule a priority around what they need personally, it's time to change that. You need to make yourself first.
Amen, sister. Yes, Carol.
There you go.
Yep.
And think about this, you know, the way we're communicating right now. This is probably the most you've looked at yourself in a long time, huh? Think about it.
Put on makeup today, Al.
Yeah. And I get to see everything, you know, it's like, oh gosh, that's what I really look like. Cause you're always just looking out of your own body. So sometimes you forget you because you are looking out of you. You don't look at yourself. You look at others and react accordingly. But all of a sudden in these kinds of meetings, you're looking at you going, oh my gosh, what's that on my tooth right there? Look at this, you know, and I wear a hat. My hat's always crooked. Now I know I have a crooked head compared to my face. And you're like, I am learning all kinds of things. So yes, you really need to keep yourself first.
If I could also
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to dovetail on what Al was saying. At Cross Insurance, we have traditionally not been a work at home company. So this has been quite the experiment for us. And, you know, we pride ourselves in being your neighborhood insurance agency. We're family owned and run, but we do have offices throughout New England. And I work with people in our offices in Portland, Bath, and Wakefield. So that's quite a stretch of people to try to connect with. And one thing that has really helped us stay connected and put our personal wellness first is we have done what we're calling the Be Well Challenge. And basically what that is any exercise, physical activity, meditation, anything that we're doing to help our physical well-being, we are recording those minutes and submitting them to some volunteers from our culture committee, which is another thing that we've started within the past few years just to keep the morale high and just basically just keep the office, our emotional, mental, physical well-being healthy. And I have to say, at first I was like, I work out. I don't need to report to other people in my office. But I've actually have gotten excited now to go and log my minutes every day. We've made it into a competition. Winners are drawn at random. We get gift cards to Amazon and things like that. But, you know, so it's kind of fun in that respect that you know have prizes to compete for, but it's also really connected us as an office. And you know, every month we look forward to the newsletter from the culture committee talking about what everyone's doing to stay active. And I got to tell you, I've learned more about my colleagues that live up in Bath or, you know, down in Wakefield and Portland. I've learned more about them probably in the past 7 months than I have in the past few years. So I think the best advice I could give to any sort of leader or business owner is really try to encourage your employees not only to participate, but be a part of the actual development of these wellness programs. Because when you take something on and make it your own, you're very motivated to stay engaged with it. And I know it's been, you know, very good for me from a mental health standpoint, as far as being away from my colleagues that I normally see every day. Probably spent more time with them than I did my own family on a regular week, to not seeing them at all. So
let me ask all three of you if you have any suggestions. If someone is watching our segment and they work for a really small company or they are self-employed and money is really tight right now, as you know, many businesses are really feeling the pinch from this pandemic. If they aren't in a place where they have money to help someone set up an ergonomically sound workspace at home, does anyone know of any public resources available to help with that? Like, is there grant money available, or have you heard any, you know, tax specialists saying, well, maybe the employee can buy that and then it could be taken as a deduction off their taxes? Or I'm just curious. I'm trying to think of the folks who aren't lucky enough to work for companies, or maybe lucky is the wrong word, but who aren't working for companies that have deeper pockets and can help with those kinds of resources.
The short answer for me is no. You know, in terms of state or local dollar bills, just good ergonomics doesn't need a lot of cash. You can be creative with a lot of stuff. You know, like I said, an Amazon box. I had one of my employees that said it was an Amazon box that was like this long and it was this tall. So they would place it short side up when they sat down, and then when they wanted a standing workstation, they flipped it the other. Oops, they flipped it the other way, and it placed their screen in the right position. Then they had to be creative to get their keyboard in the right position. So creativity is fairly easy to get good ergonomics. Fancy, you know, you can get fancy and invest a lot of cash, but a lot of the places that we've worked with over the past 6 months, it's working with what they've got at home. And just, it's the whole idea of getting to understand the position of that arm parallel to the floor and what workspace. Do I have a countertop? Do I have a bar top? Do I have an ironing board? Do I have something that'll match that? And then I just need to get that screen up at my eye height. Right now, I'm using a little green table that was laying beside the bed to place us at the right height. You know, it's just understanding the concept and then just using stuff you have. You know, it doesn't have to be magic. And I think I sent to you, Carol, a little thing on the MacGyver, how to be a MacGyver. So things they can use. So maybe you could post that at the end too, like Lisa said, on that same website that gives them ideas of how to deal with that. And
Yeah.
that's been tried and true for us.
Yeah, and oftentimes when you're doing that assessment, you have to keep in mind things like, okay, the sun sets in this window at this time of the day, it's going to be tremendous glare, or I only get really decent internet connection in the southwest corner of my house, so I have to set up my workspace somewhere in the southwest corner of my house. Those are some of the other sort of environmental considerations that you need to take into account, right?
I'll give you an example. The guy's son's desk is right in front of a window. I just put the shade up right now. I could barely see you guys because there's so much light. This is called Discomfort Clear. And even though a window is a cool thing to set up in front of, it can be very disconcerting, because what happens, it'll create, when you're sitting there, it's like driving at night with the headlights in your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You do this and you lean in. So it's eye ache, headache, neck ache, and you're going, I don't understand what's going on. And a lot of times it's the light that's coming from that window or this window, or, you know, even if you have a light that's in your face like this, you try to get that discomfort glare out. So it's just finding the right place in the house and understanding those nuances.
And just to piggyback on that and the idea of the sunlight, it's also, I mean, it's a motivator to move around more. And that is one of the things, you know, in our work environments, the more recent work environments that we've been creating, they were designed to have people move more, sit, stand, move into a private room, walk over to the cafe and work. And I know a lot of people, as you just said, Carol, just parked on their couch for 10 hours straight, hunched over, you know, and they're not even like, so this idea of movement and finding ways to get the ergonomics you need, all the stuff that Allan has shared, the photos are awesome. OSHA also has great diagrams with dimensions on their sites that you can look at, all free. I was just also going to say, certainly having conversations, think about mental health now. We'll move away from physical health, think about mental health. These conversations that you can have with people are totally free. Who have you not connected with, maybe even outside of work, that would give you a chance to reach out and connect? People are starved for connection, for authentic conversation. And that is another opportunity we have in this social moment, this social experiment. Our society, compared to others that are so much more based on connection and face-to-face communication, it's so authentic and real, and we don't have that. But now we have the chance to build upon it, to build that muscle, to be better and to be more connected. The last thing I was just going to say on this, because I saw somebody had referenced Staples, a question about investing and buying at Staples. I just want to say, locally, we have some fantastic ergonomic companies that sell good furniture and good quality in ergonomics. And I'd steer you to actually Craigslist or eBay first to find the good stuff. You know, companies are going to be selling off office furniture before you go to Staples to buy a cheaply made chair that maybe isn't the best and it's clunky and bad design. And again, we can share resources on brand names if you're interested, but it just kills me to see people go buy what they think is a good chair when it's really it's not. So.
Right. Yeah.
And if I may also add on to that, insurance carriers tend to be a resource or a wealth of resources for different services. I can't say enough about MEMIC, and I'm not just saying this because we're doing this with them. MEMIC offers so much. I know Al touched upon, they're doing that virtual ergonomic assessment with their policy holders. I would say the majority of the policy holders that we write workers' comp for in Maine are with MEMIC. So like I was saying before, if you have workers' comp, contact your agent and they can contact should contact the insurance carrier to see what might be available. And it's not just MEMIC, there's a lot of other insurance carriers that offer similar resources. And the best way to access those is to just ask. A lot of times they offer trainings through third-party vendors, sometimes at a discounted price because they have a agreement with them. Another thing that I meant to mention earlier too that's becoming an issue is the issues with privacy and cyber breaches because we have so many people working from home. And one of the things that our office goes through is phishing training. And that's basically an online training that all employees are required to do to make sure that they are recognizing what emails could be potentially fraudulent. We're seeing a lot of these emails getting hacked. I've gotten emails from people pretending to be my colleagues, asking me to wire them money. And they're very convincing. They've gotten very good. So you know, one thing that we are really encouraging policyholders to do is to talk to us about cyber coverage, first of all, cyber liability coverage, but also to see if they're offering any sort of cyber trainings to their employees so that they know what to look for and with all the scams going around and things like that. So like I said, you know, the best thing you can do is call your broker to see what kind of resources are available. If you don't have a broker, then call us at Cross Insurance and we'd be definitely, you know, look at your policies and see what we can do for you.
This is all terrific advice. Thank you. I see that we have some questions in the queue. So let's shift to the audience questions now. And Strawberry, can you send us the first?
Yes. So how should our company manage risk for employee injuries resulting from a poor work from home ergonomics?
I can probably answer some of that. Because we're starting to see claims, more industry are requesting anybody who works from home have an e-ergo, and that's that virtual ergo assessment. We don't go to their homes. We actually, and a lot of companies will even have us phone call just like this and have a conversation and have us actually look and have a real-time discussion, as well as, you know, send us the photos and then we'll give you some suggestions on how we can make those changes. Try to get folks to report early as they can. If they start to feel a little ache or pain, let us know right away, or let your employer know right away, and then they can get a resource like if we're your insured, we can pop in there and take a look to see it might be just where you have the mouse located, or the fact that you're not taking a stretch break, or you know, just some minor changes that can make all the difference in the world. We did that in real time and on site, but we can do it virtually now. So today, take advantage. And note that you don't get charged when we do that. That's all part of your policy. So you know, it's done at no charge. It's just part of the service. So we want you feeling better, makes us feel better, and it's a win-win all the way down, you know, down the line. So take full advantage of that.
Good. Second question.
This is another workers' comp centric one, but how are claims managed when someone is injured at their workplace when their workplace is now their home? As an example, I trip over my dog or the company purchased box of paper and get injured.
I can touch on that one a little bit.
I'm going to bounce past that one to you, Anastasia.
Yes,
there it is.
Yeah. So yeah, there's really no simple answer to that question. Essentially, the way workers' compensation is defined is if you are an employee that is injured in the scope and course of your employment. So simple case may be yeah, you your ergonomic setup isn't good and you've noticed that you're having issues with carpal tunnel or a pinched nerve. We've been seeing those for years in office settings that aren't necessarily at home. Where it gets a little more dicey is I'm working from home, I trip over my dog. Well, tripping over my dog, that's when the questions start. What was I doing when I tripped over my dog? Was I walking to my door to let a client in? Was I on my lunch break and I was walking to the kitchen to make a sandwich? You know, in the latter case, probably walking to the kitchen to make a sandwich isn't in the scope and course of your employment. You're taking a break and you trip and fall. But it's one of those cases where it's really a case-by-case basis. So the best advice I could give to anyone who has employees working from home is just to have that open communication, have a conversation with each employee about what their workspace looks like. Have them take a picture of their workspace. And that goes back to also the ergonomics piece that Al was touching on. I know when we started having employees working from home, we went through, we were given a checklist of things that we needed to have done. That was more to do with just making sure we had the proper equipment and things like that. But it's not a bad idea just to have a conversation with your employees as to what their workspace looks like and determine that it's a safe area for them to be working in. You know, another thing employers want to be aware of with employees working at home is the whole privacy piece too. Who's coming into their home, who's coming into their workspace. I know this doesn't really pertain to workers' comp, but just something important to think about. Do they have a nanny coming in that, you know, can be seen what they're doing on their computer? Do they have a roommate or something like that? So, and the best advice I can give to any employer is, you know, just be open with your employees, have conversations, and then see what you can do to help them make their workspace as comfortable and safe as possible.
Good.
Carol, was it you or was you, Anastasia, that we were talking about your workspace and one of you had an extension cord running across right by the desk? I can't remember. Was it one of you two?
I don't think it was me.
Okay, it wasn't you, but you know, I mean, things like that are slip, trip, and fall things. You know, that I have one plug in this whole room, so I had to run a cord over, and you know, that's a loss leader for us at MEMIC and workers' comp, slips, trips, and falls, and particularly with the older workforce that we got going on. So, you know, just look for those things too. Less ergonomic, more safety.
Right. How about another question, Strawberry?
Question from Catherine Lamson. How are we seeing culture being affected by remote work?
That one's for you, Lisa.
That's a Lisa question.
All right. All right. Well, it's similar, you know, the culture, if the culture was strong in the workplace environment, if there was a strong connected culture, then chances are that will carry through in the remote world, because often that culture is connected to leadership. I always say, it sounds like a broken record. I always come back to leadership and purpose and clarity of vision, but they're just so essential. So the culture is often a reflection of what the tone has been set at the top with leaders, and then going down to managers and so on. Again, connection to purpose. So I think that I have seen personally, some organizations' culture is stronger than ever. It's incredible. They've achieved amazing things. They've been blown away by their own productivity, but not just productivity, creativity, and connectedness. And then there are others that are struggling. Honestly, they are struggling. But I think that when we start to dig in and pull apart the strings, you can trace it back to fuzziness of vision, communication, transparency, trust, all those things I was talking about. So I think, and I said this to somebody else, we were talking about the activity of work. And I think we were just saying that work is an activity. I think Tony Payne said this earlier, work is an activity, not a place. If I am going to go to Houlton, Maine, where I was born, I'm going to hop in a car and drive there. And Carol, you're going to meet me there, and Anastasia and Allan, we're all going to go up to Houlton. We're getting there different times. We all get there. We get to our destination. I don't know what car you drove, and I don't care. We got there. We got to the destination. And I think it's that way with work. We have work to do. We get the work done where we are when we do it, to a point, depends on the function. I'm not going to be a blanket statement here, but where we are, whether I was at home or a coffee shop or the library or in an office, does that vehicle matter as much as just getting the outcomes and getting it done?
So Lisa, I'm listening to you say that. I'm just wondering, for workers who feel like they're working for an organization that does have that clarity of purpose, and there's everybody's rowing in the same direction. When you talk about productivity issues, and earlier you had said, well, part of the reason that productivity has been off the charts is people are afraid of losing their jobs. Do you think that for companies that make a priority out of purpose and collaboration to reach that purpose, it's less an issue of fear? Do you think it's just, I'm just trying to get at that, you know, I feel for someone who's working from home and they're just working all the time because they're afraid if they don't, they're going to get left behind.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, it's one of the blog posts I'm going to share is just that conversation about who works from home and who doesn't, because that is also, we're going to start to see more of that, the us and the them, you know, the haves and the haves not, and there's a lot that needs to be considered around that. But when I said people are afraid, I think, again, it's funny because a few months ago I did a talk for the chamber and somebody asked that. She said, these are good ideas and I want to, I'd like to see them incorporated in my company, but how do I go about doing that? And I said, it begins with a conversation. And one of the 6 factors about remote work that we need to think about is perceived supervisory support, my relationship with my manager. And if I don't feel comfortable bringing an idea, a new idea to my manager and asking to do things differently, then that right away is a red flag in a way. Again, it goes to that trust and connection and all those other things. So if you're in a situation where you are afraid, you are scared, and you're working yourself to death because you're so afraid, that's a really tough place to be right now. And then also knowing what's going on with the economy, it's a terrible place to be. And I don't have any wonderful answers. I wish I did, but I do often say it comes back to a conversation. Where can you begin a conversation? And maybe it isn't with your manager because of that fear or that trust factor, but is there somebody else within the organization that you can have a conversation with to try to move your way forward? God knows it's stressful enough right now. And then to layer this on top, and then if you're homeschooling kids too,
right,
you know, empathy. I mean, that is the one thing that I think we're seeing come out more is empathy. And again, I go back to those leaders who are transparent and communicate and clear, empathetic. I mean, those are the traits we need. Those are the qualities we need. But you know what? We don't need it just in this moment. We need it all the time. We need we need that all the time.
Right.
Hey, Carol, not that I'm sucking up because Catherine Lamson is the senior vice president at MEMIC, but I have to say they've done a really good job there. And one thing they did, you know, like Lisa said, they have to be open and honest and transparent. And one of the things they did early on, and I still think it's not too late for other industries to look at that and do it if they're thinking to do this transition, was they would do an open letter from each senior vice president each day. In the beginning, it was every day we would get from Mike Borg, you know, Matt Harmon, from Catherine Lamson, from, you know, and we would read their thoughts and feelings about this whole thing, and they were very real. They're very transparent, and we all realized we were feeling the same exact way. So it was comforting to know that your senior management was. Now we're down to once a week. Mike writes, and occasionally they're cycling, and then we, you know, we've had a survey go out, a couple. And there's been, folks are making the transition. They're actually liking what they're doing. So that transparency, like Lisa said, but you got to dig in and find that knowledge and understand it. So.
Good. I think this has all been really helpful. Strawberry, do we have time for that last question in the queue?
Yes, it's a little
bit.
It's a little bit of a bulky one, but that's okay. Do you have any resources for policies on remote work? Before the pandemic, my team all worked in the office, but we're all remote now, so I'm considering hiring completely remote employees in the future. But my local team they took furniture home and they're available for local team meetings, which would be more challenging with a remote employee. Do the expectations need to be the same for all employees?
How much flexibility is there going forward?
I've got a great resource, and I'll share the link, but they have been super generous with all of their information. It's a company called GitHub, GITHUB, and their policies are widely shared, all free. It's almost like a free source, or what is it called? You know, open sharing, open source. There you go. But there is a lot of great information that I'll share some links.
Oh, terrific. Well, thank you. So if we were doing this in our normal business breakfast forum format, you would hear thunderous applause for our panelists who shared their expertise and their insight today. I really do appreciate it. And for the folks who are still logged on, we record our Making It Work sessions. Our segments will be posted on pressherald.com at a later date. We'll have the resources and the links that our panelists have spoken of, so you can go there and get additional information. And again, thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to the audience. Thanks to our sponsors. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.